You're a woman of consequence. Whether you're navigating a C-suite merger, anchoring a household with surgical precision, or simply holding your world together with a level of competence most people find exhausting even to witness, you are used to winning. You solve problems. You optimize systems. You endure until the goal is met. But somewhere in your private life, there is a glitch in the architecture. You can face down a boardroom full of critics without blinking. But when he doesn't text back, when his voice turns cold, when his attention suddenly disappears, your heart reacts with the frantic, unrefined terror of a 7-year-old child. In that moment, the executive vanishes, your composure disappears, and your elite brain does something dangerous. It doesn't walk away. It goes into high-stakes crisis management, trying to fix a man who is quietly dismantling you. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why even the most powerful women fall into this trap. Because the truth is unsettling. You don't actually miss him. You miss the version of yourself you believed you were becoming before the relationship began stealing your light. Most people look at situations like this and say something incredibly shallow. She's smart. She should know better. But intelligence is irrelevant when the alarm system is tuned to the wrong frequency. In clinical psychology, this pattern looks more like a miscalibrated radar system. Your instincts aren't broken. They are just tuned to prioritize utility over safety. You subconsciously scan for men who give you something to solve. This creates something I call potential addiction. It happens when you fall in love with who a man could become, rather than who he repeatedly proves himself to be. Later in the video, I'm going to show you why your high IQ is actually the primary reason you haven't left yet. But first, we have to look at the brain chemistry. Inconsistent affection creates a powerful neurological loop called intermittent reinforcement. It is the dopamine casino. When affection is unpredictable, the brain releases massive spikes of dopamine when it finally appears. You might not be in love. You might be in neurochemical withdrawal. Why would a woman who demands excellence in her career accept emotional chaos in her personal life? The answer often begins with a sophisticated version of the fawn response. Some people fight conflict. Some people flee from it. But highly competent women often adapt to it. Somewhere early in life, you likely learned a subtle equation. Being valuable equals being loved. Being useful equals being safe. So you became exceptional. You anticipated needs. You performed emotional labor so well that people began to rely on it. In the boardroom, this looks like leadership, but in the bedroom, it becomes the utility trap. You begin believing that if you can just communicate better, be more patient, be more understanding, you'll finally earn the security you want. But here's the sensation you need to recognize. Your subconscious isn't trying to solve the present. It is trying to get a do-over on the past. You've likely chosen someone who mirrors an old wound, someone emotionally unavailable or difficult to please, because you believe that if you can finally solve them, you will finally heal the part of you that felt rejected years ago. It's not a relationship. It's an attempt to win an old war. But there is a brutal truth hiding inside that hope. You cannot consult someone into caring. You cannot project manage someone into empathy, and no amount of excellence can turn emotional indifference into love. At this point, two identities begin to emerge. The first is the relational laborer. By the time you get home, you have used up your cognitive budget. You're suffering from profound decision fatigue. You've spent 10 hours being the strategist for everyone else, and you come home to a partner who treats you like a resource, not a person. You find yourself becoming a crisis manager for a grown man, managing his moods and his life simply because you are too tired to argue and too competent to let it fail. This is the woman mommy script, infantilizing him because you are terrified that if you stop over-functioning, the entire system will collapse. But there is another identity available, the sovereign woman. She understands that her competence is meant to be a filter, not a shield. She stops asking, "Does he like me?" and begins asking, "Is this man worthy of the life I have built?" This brings us to the paradox I mentioned earlier. Your intelligence is actually your biggest liability. Because you are smart, you're a master rationalizer. You can write a dissertation on his childhood trauma to explain away his current behavior. You can build an entire psychological theory to justify his withdrawal. You use your high IQ to build a more sophisticated cage. But while your mind is busy understanding him, your body is sending signals. Notice the tightness in your jaw. Notice the shallow breathing when his key turns in the door. Notice the mental fog that only appears when you're around him. Your nervous system already understands something your intellect is trying to negotiate away. Your body knows when love feels like safety and when it feels like survival. So how does recalibration begin? It begins with a diagnostic check. We call this an emotional audit. High-functioning women often hide behind professional language. They say, "I'm stressed." But stress is a professional mask. To get the right data, we need precision. Look at your internal state as a set of data points. Are you resentful? Spiritually depleted? Lonely? Uneasy in your own home? The moment you begin naming emotions with clinical precision, they stop behaving like storms. They become data, and data gives you power. When you start observing the actual cost of staying, you stop trying to find a future in a relationship that was never built to sustain you. If this resonance feels like a weight lifting off your chest, you're exactly who this channel was built for. Subscribe. We aren't here for dating tips. We are here for an architectural overhaul of your identity. Success is meant to be a filter, not a burden. You were never meant to be a project manager for someone else's dysfunction. You are a woman of consequence, and your energy is a currency that should be invested, not spent. This is what it means to be sovereign. It means understanding that you are the prize, and the prize does not chase. For years, you may have been told that your strength makes you intimidating, that your standards are unrealistic. But look closely at who tells you that story. It's almost always someone who benefits from you shrinking. You are not difficult to love. You are simply too expensive to mistreat. A lighthouse never negotiates with the ocean. It does not chase ships. It does not dim its lights to make the fragile boats more comfortable. It simply stands, steady, bright, and allows the vessels that cannot navigate its brilliance to disappear in the dark. You are not broken. Your radar is simply recalibrating. And once that process finishes, love will no longer feel like a second job. Take a breath. The recalibration begins now.